So, I am a person who has lost my sight and my value in God. I have lost sight of my potential and the dreams that have been given to me. I was given a wonderful gift, and that was my wife. And in the beginning stages of our marriage, everything seemed perfect. Our relationship blossomed, and God went as far as to bless us with children. But through this union, I noticed she changed. By God sending me someone to love, God showed me the love that I had in turn for Israel. Although God gave me this gift of a wife, he then asked me to separate from her. Just as the Israelites turned from the love and the blessings that God had given them, she too had turned from God and turned to something far more insignificant, man. See, but I know there's a reason why God allowed me to fall into this pit of shame and self-worthlessness. I know it's because he had something far more greater for me and my family. Let me share with you a little background. I am the son of Beri. I have 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. Their names are Jezreel, Lo-Ruhamah, and Lo-Ami. Due to the sins of my wife, God appointed these names to my children to relate to my relationship with my wife and the relationship that God had with Israel. The name of my first child was going to be Jezreel. He went on to tell me that this name meant that he would soon put an end to the kingdom of Israel. The second name, Lo-Ruhamah, meant that God would no longer show love to the house of Israel. And the last name, Lo-Ami, meant that God would not consider Israel his people, nor would he be their God. It was hard for me to fall in love with a woman, form a family by her side, and then be asked to separate myself from her. Although my trust was in God, I struggled with the thought of not having my wife there with me. Not only because I had to separate myself from her, but at this point I had to put trust in God because she chose to leave with other men. See, my wife forgot about the love her and I shared, seeking a materialistic love that would never be found. In the same way, Israel turned from the love of God, seeking love from God that would leave an empty void. Israel turned to the love that God shared with them that was genuine, something that was so sincere. At first, I didn't realize that the separation from my wife would be something to benefit from. But in the midst of the trial, God was preparing me for my ministry. He was using my life and my trial to bring to light what he was feeling with his relationship with Israel. I knew God had promised bigger things through the separation, but I'm human, and the thought at times troubled me. He needed me to feel what he was feeling in order for me to be more effective with communicating with Israel. God was sharpening the tools and the gifts that he had given me for the callings that were placed over my life. And it was not until I separated from my wife that I realized God could reveal himself in a mightier and more powerful way than he had ever done in my life. Not only that, but in the midst of my trial and in the midst of me remembering the circumstances, God used this to minister to myself. And through these trials, I found strength in God to keep fighting and keep moving forward. This whole process was especially difficult because not only were people gossiping about the situation I was going through, but also because I had to face my wife knowing that she was not satisfied with our marriage and seeking love from other people. It's not easy to separate yourself from someone you love and still have to face that person. As I mentioned before, God did this because he had bigger plans for my life, bigger plans for my family. God asked me to do something very difficult, and that was to take my wife back after all the despair and the pain that she caused me with rejecting our family. But God did this to show me that he would soon redeem Israel in the same way that I took my wife back. One thing that I hope we can all understand out of my story is that God is calling us as his children to restore hope, not only in our individual lives, but in the nations surrounding us. There are people praying us into the kingdom of God. And this was something I not only did for my wife, but I also did for the nation of Israel. See, because my wife's mother also engaged in idolatry and adultery. But because God had a bigger purpose out of this negative situation, he sent me to break the chain of generational curse that was over my family and allow my wife to be the last one and to be the end of this chain of curses. Not only that, but I learned that God can use forgiving love to melt hardened hearts and to change lives.